We have to admit that for all of us, sometimes life gets all too much and we struggle to stay happy and healthy. Maybe even more so at the moment with the way the wider world is. But you know, help is always at hand. Nature is always there to nurture us. So get all your ducks in a row and take a deep, relaxing breath, because here comes Springwatch. Hello and welcome to Springwatch 2022.
You're enthusiastic.
Oh, I'm really enthusiastic because we're very pleased to be back live from Wild Ken Hill on the northeast coast of Norfolk. You may have noted we're broadcasting on a Monday through to a Tuesday. Monday through to a Tuesday. It'd be a short series, wouldn't it? Monday through to a Thursday, 8 o'clock, BBC Two. Different day, same time. Be sure to join us. Our mission, of course, is to bring you the very best of British wildlife, not just here from Norfolk, but from all over the UK. But I've got to say, it's been a little bit cold, hasn't it?
I know. I packed my T-shirts, Chris, but I did put my thermals in the bag as well, and I'm going to show you they're on.
You got them on?
Yes.
You got your thermals
chilly.
on.
First day, it's pretty chilly,
What's it like?
isn't it?
We come for Springwatch. It's a little bit more winter watch when it comes to the weather, but of course we never let that put us off. We're up to all of our usual tricks. And here at Wild Ken Hill, we have bugged the area with all of our Nest cameras, and we've already got plenty of activity.
Yes, we were here last year and we had a fantastic variety of nests, and we're not going to disappoint you this year because just look at that. It's a smorgasbord already. Those are fabulous nests with birds in them. Let's have a look first of all at our swallow nest, because there's been a lot of activity. Of course there isn't right now, but there are lots of chicks in there and they're pretty developed. So I wanted to show you those because I reckon they could be gone any time this week. Now, you may remember last year we had swallows and we were betting on the last week, weren't we, that they would leave by the end of the series.
Yeah.
They didn't, but I'm pretty sure that these are going to leave near the beginning of this series. What do you reckon?
Well, that's a pretty ambiguous, I mean, you know, beginning of the series.
Well, like, you know, by the end of the week. I'll put my money on that. They'll leave by Thursday.
OK, well, you're really sticking your neck out, aren't you? Well, you really are. I'll tell you what, let's go back to that choice of nest that we've got here. Pick another one. What about our buzzard? Look at the buzzard there. Left centre. We can take a look at that. One of the adults is in attendance at the nest. Beautiful view there. Look, you can see there's 3 youngsters there. That adult delicately looking after them in the soft evening light. Oh, that's superb, isn't it? What a view.
That's
and we're going to have a
stunning.
bit of a raptor fest. I'll tell you, we've got plenty more raptors coming up. And before we move on, I forgot at the top of the show, we've got something super special tonight.
What's that then?
Well, we've got Osmia bicolor.
Oh, the Osmias.
Don't look it up, OK? Don't cheat by looking it up. But we've got this little thing called Osmia. It's an invertebrate. It's buzzing around out there in the British countryside, and it's got the most extraordinary life history and life cycle. And you'll be seeing it tonight, so stay tuned for that.
Yes, do stay tuned for that. Now, we've been showing you our nests, and they're at the very heart of the Springwatch series. But we've also got a theme running through this series, which is the restorative power of nature. And here at Wild Ken Hill, where they're restoring it to nature, is the perfect place to be for the next 3 weeks. Sunrise in spring, with a cacophony of bird song up above and the calm beauty of wildlife below. The warmer days waking up a rich carpet of wildflowers. Perfect place in spring for the many hares that we see here at Wild Ken. And the insects too, bees and butterflies, making the most of that rich nectar. It's full of colour and full of life. We've got the yellow wild hammer who sings his song, making sure everyone knows he's there as a barn owl starts his night in flight. The wetlands at the end of the day are full of noise and chatter, of waders and birds of prey that soar across the setting sun. A stunning ecosystem of life, which we're here to explore. Beautiful, isn't it? It's beautiful.
I think you might have brought a tear to my eye.
No, listen, I wanted to
with your
uplift
prose.
everybody and make them forget the stress of the day and go into Springwatch with a smile on their face and a lighter heart. That was my aim. Did it work?
Yes, it worked.
Jolly good.
I apologise for my mirth. In fact, you know, I was walking along the track today and I heard a Yellowhammer. It didn't even get through all of its song, not the whole little bit of bread and no cheese. It only did the little bit of bread, and that was enough to make my heart miss a beat, because I hadn't heard that so far this year. Sadly, Yellowhammers have disappeared where I live. So just being out here and connecting with it does make such a difference. And it's not just us that feels that way. We know that many of you do too, certainly since lockdown, when you posted so enthusiastically on social media about that connection with nature. Well, many people have never forgotten that, and they continue to engage just like this.
My favourite time of year is spring because of all the young birds hatching.
The place at the moment is surrounded with birdsong you can hear now. A reed warbler started up. This time of year, the spring particularly, is great for the song.
There's nowhere more I'd like to be than sat beside the reed beds in the morning with my camera, just watching the wildlife.
One of the things that excites me is seeing the different interactions between completely different species, like several species squabbling with each other, competing over who gets the best seeds at a bird feeder.
This is where I come. I can just soak in the greenery, the wildlife. I've just been watching mayflies do this dance where they go up and then they sort of float down. It's just a beautiful place to be.
It's great to see you all out and about in your local patches. Please do keep sending in your experiences of spring and your photos and your comments using the hashtag Springwatch. OK, let's show you the map. Make sure you all know where we are, make sure we know where we are. Well, we're down in Norfolk on the coast, down here at Wild Ken, which is where we've been for the last year, so I'm pretty sure I've got that bit right at least.
Yeah, I'll give you 9 out of 10 for
Thanks
that
very
one.
much.
My nostrils in about the right place,
I think so.
as it stands. Of course, it's not just about Norfolk. We want to cover the whole of the UK, and on that account, we have the one and only naturalist extraordinaire, broadcaster extraordinaire, Iolo Williams. He's up here on the island of Mull, on the west coast of Scotland. Mull, of course, renowned for its super sexy wildlife. Plenty of it there, and we're not at all jealous, of course, Iolo.
Yeah, you should be jealous. You should be jealous. Just look at this glorious Mull. Glorious being the operative word. We were up here, of course, for Autumn Watch and Winter Watch, and I'm delighted to say that I'm back up here for 3 weeks of Spring Watch. Why have we come back up to Mull? Well, simply because it's one of the most beautiful parts of the UK. It's got stunning vistas, fantastic landscapes packed full of iconic wildlife, from otters to eagles and so much more. Yes, indeed, the Isle of Mull has got absolutely everything. I am back in my happy place here on Mull. Now, Gillian can't be with us for Springwatch, but I'm delighted to say that Megan McCubbin joins us. And Megs, you're on a wildlife tour of the northeast of England.
Yes, Iolo, I am. I'm on a bit of my own road trip, and I love it because I really enjoy exploring and finding new places. And at the moment, I'm stood on the shores of Kielder Water, and behind me you can see and hear, hopefully, Kielder Forest, because there's a cuckoo calling over there if you tune in your ears and it calls at the right time. But I'm really excited to be here in Northumberland because Northumberland is a magical place, and every time I come to visit, I am wowed and astonished by the biodiversity, the different habitats, and the life and the culture that is up here. It's absolutely stunning. And for every location that I'm visiting throughout the course of the next 3 weeks, it has restoration and people at the heart of every story. So I can't wait to dive into all those characters and the species that we're going to find just alongside you too. But Chris, Michaela, I mean, it's a really good mixture of locations we have this year, isn't it?
And one thing you're going to bump into a lot of, Megs, up there is the midge. And I happen to know that you've already been itching and scratching today, and that's because you forgot this. Before you left, I said, don't forget the midge spray. You left it on the kitchen worktop, and now I'm having the last laugh.
Poor Megs, it's hard work when they're in midges. But here we go, there's Megs and her midges in Kielder up there. So you can see we're very spread out across the UK, but of course it's not just about us coming to you live from the UK. Our teams have been hard at work from the start of spring to bring you the very best of British wildlife. Spring has arrived. A kaleidoscope of colour transforms the land as the season brings with it new life.
It's a sumptuous spectacle, full of simple pleasure, of rebirth. A season full of drama, full of hope.
From our most miniature marvels to our most majestic mammals, spring encompasses the power of nature. And we're here to follow all the emotion, excitement, and success that comes with it.
We get swept away and dive headfirst into the beauty of this exceptional season.
Spring, my favourite season, and we moved up now to the north of the island to the wonderful Treshnish farm, and here they manage the land in a way that benefits wildlife, and spring has certainly arrived here. Just look at this. This whole meadow is full of bluebells, and this is a plant that we usually associate with ancient woodland, but here it's covering the whole field. It's not just bluebells either. Look around you find pignuts, birds for trefoil, so much more. If we were to come back in 3 weeks' time, the bluebells will have gone over, but it'll still be a sea of colour, only full of different characters. It's an incredible place, and this is not the only sign of spring up here on Mull. No, not by any means. Venture down to the coast now and you will see thrift in full flower. These delicate pink flowers are everywhere at the moment, and of course we've got a lot of grey-lag geese. Many of those have got goslings, noisy goslings now, and the cuckoo. You can't go anywhere up on Mull without hearing the cuckoo, in decline in England and Wales, but doing so well. And of course our wonderful bluebells. We are surrounded by them here. Now, if you're watching Autumn Watch and Winter Watch, you'll know that Mull is home to a special furry mammal, the otter. It's one of the best places in the whole of the UK to see otters. Why is that? Well, for a start, you've got 300 miles of coastline, over 400 kilometres, and the shallow waters here, they're full of small fish and crabs, the otter's food. And if you travel around, you'll see them fishing in seaweed like this one, looking around, and every now and again digging out a massive crab and bringing it to shore. I'll tell you what's interesting with crabs is that crabs make up a third of the diet of small cubs, but only 3% of the diet of adult crabs, and that indicates that they're easy to catch. So that's why so many of these cubs are eating them there. And if you're up on Mull this time of year, well, keep your eye open, because this is the time to see otters with cubs. Most of the cubs are born in spring. Here we have a mother with two fairly well-grown cubs. These were probably born in winter. But keep your eye open, as I say, because there are otters everywhere here. And those otters will be playing for much of the time. And I say it's a mother because the mother is the only one who looks after the cubs. The dog otter will mate with the female, but that's it, then leaves her alone. And those youngsters, well, they're going to be with the mother for roughly 12 months or so. As you can see up here, our wildlife camera team, have already been very active all over the island. But we've also this year teamed up with some local naturalists who have been putting out camera traps. And one of these is a 13-year-old boy called Murdo. We're hoping to catch up with Murdo later on in the series. And Murdo has been getting shots of otters day and night, a cub sprinting here, then the mother comes in and sprints in almost exactly the same place. And Murdo's been watching these otters for quite a few months now. We've also teamed up with guide and naturalist Ewan Miles, and Ewan has put a camera trap up on a cairn up on the hills. Now, a cairn is a pile of stones put there by man, and it attracts a whole range of wildlife. Now, you see here, we've got a stoat, not something we were expecting up there, but the stoat has obviously come in to look for prey, and the pine marten, a recent arrival here on Mull. And what's brilliant to have that, Ken, is that you can compare the size of the two. Now, a fully adult male stoat will weigh about 450 grams, but the pine marten around 2 kilograms. So the pine marten is significantly larger than that stoat. But it's not just mammals. We've also had a variety of birds using that cairn as well. Birds of prey, like the kestrel, will use it. They'll perch up looking for prey all around them. We've also had the magnificent golden eagle on that cairn too, just standing up surveying the land. Ravens, the ubiquitous ravens, they're everywhere here. And also meadow pipits. So little meadow pipits, I'm sure meadow pipits will be nesting in the tall vegetation nearby. And we'll be keeping our eye on that camera up on the cairn. And any more wildlife, well, we'll let you know straight away. It's time to leave sunny Mull for now and whiz down to Norfolk and catch up with Michaela once again.
Well, Yolo may have his cairn on a hill, but I've got Ken on a hill. Not literally, of course, but there is a hill here called Ken Hill, which is why the whole place is called Wild Ken Hill. It is about the only hill here. The rest of the area is pretty flat. There's 4,000 acres of farmland. Now, we're on the coast. You've got the beach here. Snession Beach is just below, just to the south of us. And then you've got all these different areas in the farm. You've got the wetland area, the rewilding area, the regenerative farmland, the woodland. They've recorded about 2,500 species here. It's a brilliant place for wildlife, and this is why. 25% of the site is being rewilded, where they're letting nature take over with ponies, cattle, these Tamworth pigs and beavers, which are all managing the landscape. And around the fields, there's lots of field margins and hedgerows to boost declining farmland species like linnets, as well as UK's fastest declining bird, the turtle dove. And seeing it here just goes to show that this regenerative farming that's working alongside wildlife really is working. It's boosting the diversity and repairing the soil. You've got protected woodland there that borders the freshwater marshes. They've managed to boost target species like black-tailed godwits. There's a huge variety of wetland species here. Spoonbill, fabulous bird to see. Egrets, lapwings. It may be a working farm, but it's proof that farming definitely can work hand in hand with wildlife. There is so much wildlife here, and as you've seen, a fabulous variety of birds. And our specialist team have been out over the weekend and at the end of last week locating them. So we've got some nests to show you, and you can see we've got quite a lot already marked on this map. And Chris has gone into our wildlife hub to see if he can see what's happening live on our cameras in that hub. Chris.
Yes, Michaela, I am here in the Wildlife Hub. The Wildlife Hub being this bank of screens which displays the images that are coming from all of those remote cameras that we've got set out at Wild Ken Hill. I'm here with Joe Charlesworth and Ian Simpson, our camera operators. Well, not only that, they've actually set the cameras up out in the field as well. And they are monitoring these, as they do with our story developing team, 24 hours a day for a full 3 weeks. And that's why none of the interesting behaviour escapes our attention. And we're able to delve so intimately into the private lives of all of these birds. So why don't we do that now? Joe, what do we got? That's a nice little nest to start with. What about...
Skylark.
Skylark, number 16, Skylark. Let's have a look at that. We know that we've got 3 young in this nest. In fact, the adults came in and were feeding whilst Michaela was speaking a little earlier. You can see the down coat there. They've still got those sort of flabby gape flanges which identify them as youngsters that are developing. There are 3. One is quite considerably smaller than the others. We're a little bit worried about that one, particularly if the weather's inclement and the adults aren't bringing in enough food. But they will undoubtedly fledge or semi-fledge. They'll dash off into the grass, presumably now, I would say, within about 5, 6, 7 days. Joe, what else can we go for?
Ian's got the heron.
Heron, yeah, let's go and look at our herons. They're pretty good. We've got 3 herons' nests down on the marsh. Perhaps unusually, they're not in trees, they're not on the ground, but they're raised up. 2 have got 2 young, and this one has 3 young. So these are young herons. I know they look pretty much like the adults, but remember, these eggs were laid here way back in March. So these birds have already been spending quite a bit of time out of the nest, but it's a busy place. And have a look at this. This is what we saw earlier today. Lots of activity here when the adults come in with food. And you can see a lot of competition between the siblings. They're all trying to tempt that adult to regurgitate whatever it's got into their gape. The table manners are atrocious, but it's clear to see that all 3 of these all 3 of those youngsters are doing very well, so the adults are bringing in plenty of food. In fact, keep your eyes peeled on that if you're watching our cameras, as you can do from 12 midday all the way through to 9:30 at night, because the range of prey is quite extraordinary. Oh, I tell you what, look, barn owl, number 12. Joe, hit that button. One of the adults has appeared outside of the box. Now, last year, we had a camera inside the box and the birds decided not to breed for some reason. Nothing to do with our camera, I assure you. But here, we can see the adult on the outside. We've got to go inside now and have a peep, haven't we, Joe? Ian, come on, cut inside to the barn owls. What number's that? Oh.
We are 9.
Oh, there they are. OK, there are 5 there. You can just about see all of their heads if you look carefully. On the right-hand side in the middle is the smallest one. They hatch asynchronously, so there's always a biggest one and a smallest one. And see all the pellets in there where the adults have been spending the winter. Superb. What about the adult? The adult's still outside. Doesn't have any food on this occasion, but of course... Oh, no, it's hopping in. It's hopping in. Let's get back inside. Look at that. What a view. Sensational. And it might have stored food in there because they do cache food in the nest box. So it may be looking around for a small mammal that it left there earlier, and it might be then going to feed the youngsters. OK, I think we might have time for one last nest before we go. Oyster catcher. I know there's an oyster catcher somewhere. Number 28. Ian, Joe, hit the button. So sleeping on the nest is this oyster catcher here. What a cracking view. Joe is using this. All these cameras are monitored from here. So Joe's delicate little fingers down here are... Delicate little fingers, what am I talking about? Yeah. Joe's robust digits down here are steering us into that oyster catcher. Guys, thank you very much indeed. That was a treat. But I've got to say, it's not all about birds on Springwatch. We're very interested in everything that slithers, slimes, bites and stings, and particularly our most interesting invertebrates. And I said at the top of the show there was a species we're going to show you tonight, Osmia bicolor, which is quite extraordinary. So just take a look at this behaviour. It's exceptional. In fact, it's what you pay your licence fee for. Rising above the wooded valleys of the Cotswolds, a steep slope of limestone grassland warms up in the early spring sunshine. It's the perfect sun trap for one of our most precious pollinators. A tiny solitary bee called the Osmia bicolor. They might just be over a centimetre long, but what the females lack in size, they more than make up for in style. A jet black head and thorax set off beautifully by a bright ginger abdomen. But a two-tone appearance isn't the only thing that's distinctive about this bee. Today, house hunting's on the agenda. And have some very strict requirements. They're not a fan of new builds. No, Osmia prefers a pre-loved pad. One with a spiral staircase. An empty snail shell will make the perfect safe haven for a young. In fact, Osmia bees only ever build their nests inside empty snail shells. And they've perfected a very precise method. After tugging and shoving it into her desired position, she heads off to forage for pollen and nectar. Bringing the bounty back and storing it deep inside the helix. Now, the only way to see what they're creating inside would be to break open a shell, which would, of course, destroy the nest. But with a little computer-generated help, we can get a pretty good idea. With the pollen store built up, the female lays an egg alongside and seals it in its own little chamber using mastic or chewed up plant material. Depending on the size of the shell, she might repeat this process up to 5 times. Next, she searches for tiny stones and soil. She makes dozens of trips over the open field, hauling it all back to the shell, piece by piece, and filling up any remaining space to bolster defences for any unwanted intruders. Next comes another layer of chewed up vegetation, which seals the entrance to the shell completely. Then she turns the shell over so the entrance faces downwards. And there's one more step, perhaps the most elaborate of all. It's time for a spot of thatching. Females scour the hillside for pieces of dried grass. They carry them like tiny witches riding broomsticks back to their shell. She'll spend the next few hours heading back and forth with stems, some many times her own length, gradually forming them into a little teepee-like shelter, perhaps in an effort to hide the nest and its precious contents from view. Finally, having lavished her young with the utmost motherly care, she heads off to do it all over again. Multiple times over the course of the season. Never has busy as a bee rung so true.
How gorgeous is that? The Osmia bee making use out of something that was discarded, thrown away, thought to be no good to anyone. Yet really, it gives a new lease of life to something else. It's beautifully simplistic, and what a stunning design, and a lot we can learn from nature in terms of reusing and recycling things that we think we no longer want, because they can be rather useful to somebody else. Now, Now, of course, as you heard earlier, I'm on a bit of a road trip and I'm starting here in Kilda Forest, which is a fantastic place. But later on, next week, I will be moving from Kilda, the home of osprey, the home of red squirrel, over to Hawksley Nature Reserve. I might be looking at the coastal wildlife there before making my way down to Newcastle, the heart of a city, which I'm really excited to show you because, of course, wildlife lives all around us. It's on our doorsteps if only we take the time to notice. But Kilda here has a really interesting history and a really exciting future if all the current biodiversity plans continue the way that they are. It has a really fantastic history because it was built after World War I, when the demand for timber was incredibly high, and we were importing timber from all over the world, and we had a really low tree cover percentage, only 5%. So this forest was built to help both of those factors. Most of the trees here are non-native Sitka spruce, and it was introduced in 1831, and it's fast growing in low nutrient environments, which means that it's really good as a crop. In fact, this area here is still a working coppice and harvesting area for trees for timber production. But of course, there is work to be done. There is still some ancient woodland around which is being really well preserved, and they're trying to soften the borders of plantations, bringing back in native woodland to help increase biodiversity. And some of that I've already been able to see, and it's been pretty fantastic. Here we are, we have a couple of oyster catchers flying through the air, always iconic, that character bill, and here house martins. We have these all over our office and we hear them, and they are so fantastic. And of course, a goosander. A diving duck, they can have up to 8 to 11 eggs, so it's not unusual to see quite a lot of chicks, and here they're taking a ride on mum's back, conserving a little bit of energy. And the male here, clear sexual dimorphism, he's got more of a white plumage and very distinctive red bill as well. But it's not only the birds that I've been taking notice of, there's also some fantastic mammals making their home here too. This here is a pine marten. We think they managed to naturally disperse here, but look at that. Wiggle wiggle, if ever I've seen one, to scent mark the area. And a water vole, one of the most successful water vole reintroductions that we've seen anywhere across the country. And we're going to be getting up to date with all of these species and learning more about them as the next week goes on. But this is where it gets really exciting, because at 2 a.m. this morning, some news came in of something new that had just been hatched. And this is what we're going to be learning more about later on in the show. This, of course, is an osprey. This is our reservoir nest. And this adult coming in to see a newly hatched chick. A massive, impressive predator, yet being so delicate with that new chick. Can't wait to tell you more about it. But Yolo, over on the Isle of Mull, you're in your natural habitat, and I hear you're talking about some of your favourite species.
I am indeed, Megs, and yes, this is my natural habitat. Do you know what? I could live out here. It's working out. I've been to Mull now 46 times, right? In 31 years. That's not bad, is it? That's not bad. And one of the reasons I keep coming back is because it's a brilliant place to come and see birds of prey, and that includes my favourite species, the hen harrier. And Mull is ideal for harriers because the habitat is so good here. A lot of rough grassland, heather moorland, rushy areas full of small mammals, especially voles, small birds like meadow pipits, common lizards, all of them prey to hen harriers. And critically, there is no persecution here. So the island is an oasis for this bird, and they estimate that Mull and its surrounding islands has a population of somewhere in the region of 40 breeding pairs of hen harriers. That's a really impressive number. And there's nothing quite like sitting down on the moor and watching a ghostly pale male hen harrier just hunting slowly over the moorland. Absolutely fantastic. And Mull, of course, is also known as Eagle Island. Both species of British eagles are seen here on Mull. The golden eagle, with its 7-foot wingspan, impressive bird, and that beautiful gold nape, and also, of course, the white-tailed eagle, a bird that became extinct in the UK in the early 20th century, was reintroduced from the 1970s onwards, and now Mull has 21 breeding pairs of white-tailed eagle and 30 pairs of golden eagles. No wonder it's called Eagle Island. Now, we're unlikely to see white-tailed eagles on our Cairn camera because it's set up right in the middle of a golden eagle territory, but we're already seeing golden eagles on it. Now, the eagles use it as a kind of a perching post to look around for prey, to stop, to perch, to make sure that the feathers are clean there, and also every now and again to stop and try and bring up a pellet, cough up a pellet, which is exactly what this eagle is doing. It looks as if it's suffering, but it's just trying to bring up the undigested remains of what it's eaten. And we went up there afterwards and had a look, and look at what we found. Look at that. Let me try and show you this. That is a golden eagle pellet. Look at the size of that. That is huge. And it's no surprise when you think a golden eagle eats about 250 grams of food every single day. And looking at that, I can see a lot of fur in there. I can see bits of bone in there. And the fur's probably from hares and rabbits, bits of bone as well. A few feathers in there from birds too. And it's worth, if you're picking up a pellet like this, it's worth having a close look, because you never know what you'll find. Sometimes you find something quite surprising, like this pellet that was picked up here on Mull a few years ago. And if you look carefully, you can see spines in there. And those spines are actually hedgehog spines. Hedgehog's a common mammal here. And I was thinking, I wonder, did the eagle catch it or did it pick it up dead? Well, I'm pretty sure he picked it up dead. After all, hedgehogs are nocturnal. But the big question is, how on earth did that eagle swallow the spines and then bring them back up again in a pellet? Not recommended, I tell you. It's an incredible tale, isn't it, that is? Now, ever since I was a little boy, I've been fascinated by wildlife. Some of my earliest memories are to do with nature. And I've been so fortunate because all through my professional career, I've worked out in some fantastic areas just like this. But for fashion photographer come macro specialist Nathan Small, well, his is a very different story.
Greenbank Cemetery in Bristol. Not the obvious place for a day out. But for macro specialist Nathan Small, it's perfect.
It's very meditative because you're out there in the morning on your own, concentrating. You're not thinking about anything else. You're just looking out for tiny, tiny little things. It's such a good place to look for insects because there's a real variety of habitats here. What I'm doing is just walking very, very slowly and very calmly, like I've lost my keys or something. I'm looking out for if there's any movement. Aha. So yeah, there's something perched on this gravestone here. What I'm doing is I set my focus on the lens before, get nice and steady, leaning on something if possible, and then I gradually drift forwards until it hits focus and then go for it. The great thing about macro photography is that you don't really have to travel far at all to find really interesting things. There's actually all this amazing wildlife, sounds like a cliche, but right under your feet. As soon as you put a macro lens on them and get up close, there's built-in revelation. Suddenly you realize that these everyday creatures have got all these amazing adaptations and body parts. You can see all the individual hairs and even the hogtails, which are the little wing appendages which flyers use as gyroscopes to sort of stabilize in the air. Some of them look like little robots. You can see all the details in their eyes. That's what I get a kick out of, I guess.
Nathan has turned his passion into a career, but invertebrates weren't always the focus of his attention.
I actually used to work in advertising and commercial photography before, selling drinks, well-known fashion brands. I've always wanted to work in wildlife. I just had an epiphany one day where I just thought, if I don't do the thing that I really want to do now, like the longer I leave it, the harder it's going to get. So like, I just have to be brave and just do it now.
Nathan has built his own studio at home, with miniatures instead of models taking centre stage.
I stayed quite loyal to my style, I think. Quite stylised and moody and playing with shadows and contrast. A lot of the lighting and things that I'm using are the same tricks and lighting designs that I was using for advertising and for fashion and that you would use just with a model. It's all kind of the same stuff, but just shrunk down. No one breathe. Gone. Whew. So you don't get long. I know it's not the answer everyone wants, but the bugs are harder to work with than models.
All his subjects are returned to where they were found to be released. Eventually. Nathan is keen to pass on his passion to his daughter Anouk.
Ooh.
Can I hold him?
She's on it, she loves it.
The little spider.
She's absolutely obsessed. Oh, wow.
I like spiders.
I'm going to take a picture of him. We can look on our book and try and see which one he was. Yeah, and then we'll look on your pamphlet and see if he's on there, yeah? My granddad brought me to the woods and we would look for woodpeckers together and he would teach me various things. Then my granddad in Barbados was also very into wildlife and he would turn up at our hotel when we'd go and see family out there. And he'd have brought like a massive crab that he'd found on the way. Oh, he chews it. I really want to just pass that on to her. We need the next generation to take an interest in stuff, especially insects. Like, they're in big trouble at the moment. The more you notice, the more you can get into that world. And it feels like a really privileged thing to be able to see. But actually, all of these things are available for any of us if you just like slow down and take the time to have a look.
Now, when I first saw Nathan waving that camera around handheld with his flash on, I thought, OK. His pictures are technically excellent, OK. Then I saw him get it on a tripod and he went into the studio and I thought, yeah, that's OK, that's OK. Then I saw those on the reflective surface and I thought, these are OK. They're great.
Yeah, they're a bit more than OK.
They're great.
Really
I love
impressive.
those stylised ones. The symmetrical one of the ladybird was sensational. And the rose chafer with all those green colours, I really like that idea. You know, pushing, as he said, his commercial background into natural history photography, generating a new niche. Top work.
And
Really
what I
loved
really
it.
like about it, as Nathan said, is not only are they beautiful pictures, but they make you look closely at the detail of the insects, which are beautiful.
Stunning.
Absolutely stunning. So, top work, really like that. Now, we've already treated you to lots of our nests, which are being filmed remotely, but we're not just using remote cameras to film here. Every day, our camera operator is out and he's caught some real gems. So he went into the woodland, saw a hole in a tree. Usually, if you see a hole at this time of year in the spring, you can pretty well assume there's a nest in there. And you can see there's a chick on a branch, which proves the point. This is a tawny owl chick. Now, it hasn't fledged. You can see from its feathers they're still extremely downy, using those claws, those talons to cling onto the branch. And this is what we call branching. And this is what they do when they're about 3 to 4 weeks old. And then as they grow and they get to about 5 weeks, that's when they'll fledge properly. There's 2 of them, that's the smaller one of the 2. But look at this, Chris. Look at that fly. How much would that irritate you? I mean, look, that looks like a grumpy chick, doesn't it? It's sort of sitting there, gripping on, with this fly looking like it's going up
Yeah,
its
no, but me and
nostril.
Nathan would love that fly. Imagine,
yeah,
imagine
take
that
a
fly on one
picture.
of Nathan's reflective glass surfaces. It would look sensational.
Anyway, it's not just birds. Our camera operators have also been looking for the many mammals that we find here. We've seen lots of deer in the past, and we're seeing deer in the spring as well. Now, this is a roe deer. It's a male, it's a buck. They're the ones that have the antlers, and they're those very small antlers, 3-pronged antlers. It's got that very distinctive black nose as well. Now, they're usually solitary, except for probably another month's time when it gets to July, August, which is the rutting season for roe deer. So this seemingly very calm, relaxed, chilled roe deer is going to be a little bit more aggressive in, well, about 4 to 6 weeks' time when it's going to be looking for a mate. And that coat, you can already see it's getting a bit richer, a bit redder. And as the month goes by, that will get even more sort of
rich
reddy
tan.
brown.
Lovely rich tan. My favourite deer, the roe. Lovely teddy bear nose. So really a big.
You like a teddy bear nose, do
I
you?
like a teddy bear nose. On a poodle or a roe deer.
You don't strike me as someone that likes teddy bears.
Let's move on. The reason that we're in this particular field is that we thought we'd get ourselves as close as we should to this bank of trees you can see behind us, because in there is one of our nests. And typically at this time of night or slightly earlier, the adult birds will come back and circle over the wood. So on that account, our camera person, Mark Yates, is over there with his long lens, and we were hoping to get a view of them circling. But what we got a view of is a sort of dark sky, really a grey sky, with nothing in it but a couple of flighty wood pigeons. Luckily earlier we saw this, and the birds that we were hoping that would return at this particular time came early because the sky was still blue, and we're talking about red kites. What about that? Absolutely sensational. Long forked tail and those white panels make them very easy to identify if you get a good view from underneath. And this bird is arching round, dipping down, and it's going to swoop in to roost on the side of the woods. Because, as I mentioned, it is this belt of oak trees which has our nest in, the nest that we're looking at. It was the same nest we were looking at last year. We can't tell you they're the same adults, of course, but we can go to it live now and take a look at, wow, one of the adults. Is that one of the, no, it's one of the youngsters, sorry. Yeah, there we are, I was getting ahead of myself. So there are two quite well-grown youngsters there, and the adults have been quite busy bringing things in. I'm not surprised to see them sleeping, that one in the foreground sleeping at this time of the evening, because they've had so much food today. And it has been really busy. When we were watching them earlier, both adults were in attendance at the nest. This one bringing in a small mammal there. Look at that lovely silvery head, chrome yellow eye, rich tan tail. They are really spectacular birds. One egg was left in the nest, so there were a clutch of 3. 2 have hatched. That won't hatch now, of course. But here you can see presumably the female doing her duty, delicately tearing up the food. And another duty she has to perform is protecting them from the rain. We've had a few showers here today. Doesn't look altogether too happy about it, but she's doing her very best to spread her wings as widely as possible and cover those 2 quite large youngsters. And of course we'll be keeping an eye on that nest throughout the course of the series.
We really are getting fabulous views, aren't we? We do know that this is a great area for raptors. Last year when we were here, we certainly saw a lot of them. So let's have a look at another one. Let's have a look at our buzzard on our live cameras. Here we go. There's the buzzard with the 3, well, you can see, I mean, they're not as developed as the red kite chicks. That one, but again, very sleepy. These have clearly been fed a lot as well. Adult in attendance there. And, oh, that's just such a sweet little shot, isn't it? Blissful, and nodding off, going to dream through the night. Well, we've got a Raptor Fest going here, but Meg's is in Kielder, and, well, she's with a bird of prey. That is one of my favourite. But before you go into that, Chris and I were talking about your midges, and because we've got this midge spray here, we could send it up to you, but we want a reward. What, 50 quid?
About 50, yeah.
50 quid, what do you reckon?
It, you forgot it, you pay for it. £50.
50 quid? Oh, you get 50 quid? I'll get my own, thanks very much. I appreciate the offer, but, you know, I'll just go to the shop. Thank you very much for that. But yes, I'm having a bit of a bird of prey fest here myself. And again, like Michaela, this is one of my favourites. It is the glorious, the iconic, the elegant osprey. And I'm really pleased to reveal that not only do we have 1 live camera, but we have 2 live cameras on nest. So let's take a look at those now. We have our forest nest and our reservoir nest. Now, ospreys were missing from Northumberland for 200 years, and often they'd be seen passing by, back from migration during the winter, after they spent the winter in West Africa, and they'd seen fly by on their way to Scotland. But as the territories there have been taken up a little bit more, there's been natural dispersion going on, and we've seen for the first time in 2009 ospreys bred here successfully. And since that point, there have been 92 fledges, which is an incredible success, and that keeps on going. And this year, we've got 7 active nests. Now, we've seen quite a lot of activity from our ospreys so far, including this really interesting bit of behaviour, because where there's large birds with big nests, there's also a lot of attention. Crow comes in on the left, and pay close attention as to what it's after. We've got it looks like our male here from the reservoir nest, obviously not very happy, because crows will take an egg or a young chick if they can. But look there, look what the crow just did on the left-hand side. I'm going to slow it down for you in a second. Eventually pushes the osprey off the nest, but comes back up, back to guard the eggs. What a good parent that bird is. And if you look really slowly there, in it comes, stealing that stick. Now, of course, crows' nests are made up of sticks and twigs. They look quite messy at the top of trees, and potentially that crow is coming in trying to get its luck and see whether it could get an egg, and realise there was an adult there and realise it didn't have much hope, and decided to steal a stick instead, because it could have had a failed first brood and be moving on to a second. So we'll keep an eye on that interaction if anything does progress. But there is a little bit of a celebrity in these parts, and for this we have to go to our forest osprey nest cam to see who's sat on the nest at the moment. Hopefully, here we are. So this is the female that we have, and her mate is named YA. Now, he is the famous osprey that flies around here, and he's been incredibly successful. He started breeding here in 2012 and has currently reared 21 chicks, which is a staggering 23% of all fledglings that have happened from this area. And this year is the second year that he's going to become a grandfather, as his own chicks have gone on to reproduce locally as well. But we've been seeing some really doting behaviour from this pair, and it's absolutely thrilling to watch how delicate they are. Here he is. We've got YA at the back. Oh, one second. We've got a bit of rearranging, some furniture going on. We've got YA the tag here. You can see he's taking a bit of twig up and re-shifting it. And look, a chick has hatched. There's 2 chicks there. How amazing is that? And then a few days later on, we have even more chicks beginning to hatch. What you see is the male brings in most of the food. He spends a lot of his time out finding the fish, and the female takes it over, and she'll do most of the feeding of these chicks. But you can see the differences between them there. The female is about 20% larger than the male, and the male has a really clean white breast, whereas the female is more speckled in colour. She's got this kind of red necklace, if you want. But look at this, how they're feeding. How absolutely stunning is that? And it's a lot of work for the male, because not only does he have to feed the 4 hungry chicks, he also has to feed the female as well, and therefore that requires quite a lot of hunting. And we've seen some really interesting hunting behaviour from the ospreys around Kildare. They often hover above different reservoirs, and here you can see one style of catching a fish is to go in at an angle. But the most common that we see is this, going in right from above, using those amazing eyes, densely packed with photoreceptors, to pinpoint the fish, talons forward, wings back, plunge in. Was it successful? Yes, it was. How incredible is that? They can spot from about 90 metres and can plunge in from about 30. But of course, where there's success, there's always going to be competition as well. As the second bird comes in, it makes the other bird drop the fish. Look at that. Obviously, resources like this are highly important, especially at the time of the year where they're rearing young. So if they can steal another bird's fish, they might try to. And of course, you get some really interesting behaviour and some sounds from that as well. And those eyes, like I said before, are so powerful. And it's all to do with refraction. If they go in on an angle straight down, it means that they're more likely to hit the fish rather than coming in at an angle. What an amazing bird, and I can't wait to show you more about those nests as those chicks progress and grow throughout the course of the week. Now, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. Don't worry, we haven't forgotten. It's now time for our mindfulness moment. 90 seconds of pure bliss, pure enjoyment, pure happiness, No talking, no music, just adorable wildlife, natural sounds, and some amazing behaviour. And we're starting with a good one, and I promise it's going to make your heart sing.
I'll tell you, I could watch more than a minute and a half of those fox cubs. Oh, those eyes,
Gorgeous.
they melt your heart.
Gorgeous, aren't they?
Stunning.
My favourite mammal anywhere on Earth. Sadly, we're coming towards the end of the programme, but we've had this question from one of our viewers. Jane Wigley asked us, what is this? She sent this photograph of a tent of webbing spread over a spindle tree. Well, if we look a little bit closer, a second image reveals that the web was made not by spiders but by caterpillars. Huge numbers of caterpillars in this, and they are the caterpillars of this moth. This is the spindle ermine moth, and the reason that they've spun that web is to protect them from predators. Unlike some spiders' webs, it's not fragile, it's quite tough. It forms a tent over them, and they go inside there and they defoliate very often the entire tree, so it looks as if they might have killed the tree. Well, I'm very pleased to say that in the following season it normally regenerates. So thanks, Jane. I hope you are satisfied with that answer. It's all we've got time for. We'll be back again tomorrow night, of course. More action from our live cameras. And we're looking forward to introducing you to these guys, our kestrels. They're in a natural cavity in a tree. There are 3 chicks. And here is the female delicately feeding them.
And I'll be dropping in on this very special nest of white-tailed eagles.
I'll be getting up close to a pair of tawny owl chicks, helping to ring them, and they even take a nap on my hand.
Remember to keep watching the cameras from noon to 9:30, and you can do that Monday to Thursday. Get in contact with us on all our usual social media platforms. And 1 o'clock tomorrow, the lovely Hannah Stipfall is doing a live programme called Watch Out. She's doing that every day, Monday to Thursday as well, and you can watch that on Facebook, on the website. And I will be her guest tomorrow. So I'll see you at 1 o'clock. The rest of the team will see you at 8. But look what we've seen. Look what we've seen. Oh,
I know, it's just gone.
It was a red guy.
It was there.
See you tomorrow.
To find out more about uncovering urban wildlife and about how regenerative farming affects our countryside, go to bbc.co.uk/Springwatch and follow the links to the Open University.